on AMC True Crime.
New details emerging in a murder investigation in the Bronx. Detectives looking for the boyfriend of a woman they say was stabbed and tortured for more than a week in Fordham. Investigators believe 21-year-old Princesa Encarnacion-Soto was tied to a bed, attacked with a hammer, and stabbed, and then thrown down a stairwell. Meanwhile, the boyfriend's mother is under arrest and facing murder charges. 54-year-old Naida Jorge was arrested after detectives noticed a trail of blood coming from her apartment. Once inside, they say they found a bag of bloody clothes.
Before we begin, the following is for educational purposes only. It contains detailed descriptions of real events surrounding the tragic murder of 21-year-old woman. All information is sourced from public court records, official press reports, and verified legal proceedings. What would drive a mother to help her son cover up one of the most brutal crimes imaginable? In the summer of 2025, in a grimy Fordham Heights apartment building, a 21-year-old woman named Princesa Encarnacion-Soto suffered unthinkable torture at the hands of someone who claimed to love her. But the most shocking twist wasn't just the crime itself. It was discovering who helped hide the evidence. Before we continue, I just want to say, real stories like this take time to research, verify, and tell responsibly. Do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep uncovering the truth together. Your support truly makes a difference. On Tuesday afternoon, July 22nd, 2025, officers from the NYPD's 46th Precinct received a 911 call that would lead them to one of the most disturbing crime scenes of the year. At 2295 Grand Concourse in the Bronx, they found Princesa Encarnacion-Soto collapsed in a third-floor stairwell, barely clinging to life. The 21-year-old had multiple stab wounds covering her body from head to toe, severe head trauma, and injuries so extensive that the medical examiner would later discover a piece of her knuckle was missing and slits carved into the skin underneath her feet. But here's what puzzled investigators immediately. Despite the horrific nature of her injuries, there wasn't a drop of blood on her clothing or body. There was no blood on her while she lay on the staircase, and she was in fresh clothing that had no blood on her, Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny would later reveal. Someone had cleaned her up before dumping her to die. But who would do such a thing, and why? As paramedics rushed Princesa to Bronx Care Health System, detectives began following a trail of blood that led directly from the stairwell into an apartment in the same building. What they found inside would reveal the true horror of what Princesa had endured. The apartment was a nightmare of filth and squalor. The building superintendent, who had worked there just months earlier, told reporters he didn't want to go in there because everything was dirty, the whole house. But it wasn't just the grime that caught detectives' attention, it was the blood. Bloody sheets, bloody clothing, and a bloody bungee cord painted a picture of prolonged torture. The bed was soaked with blood, and investigators determined that Princesa had been tied down and systematically tortured. The wounds themselves were inflicted for pain, not to kill, Chief Kenny explained, describing slice marks on her thighs, arms, and shoulders, some fresh, others in various stages of healing. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated, sustained torture that had been going on for days, possibly weeks. But in this apartment of horrors, one area stood out for what wasn't there, a spot that had been meticulously cleaned with bleach. The apartment belonged to 54-year-old Naida Jorge, who had lived there for over 20 years. But Jorge wasn't alone. She shared the space with her 27-year-old son, Robert Strother, who happened to be Princesa's boyfriend of 3 years. Security cameras revealed Strother leaving the building, and by the time police arrived, he had vanished. Here was a man with 22 prior arrests for domestic violence, though notably, none involving Princesa. Neighbors described him as violent from childhood, someone who was verbally and physically abusive to everyone, men and women. But as investigators dug deeper into Strother and Jorge's relationship with Princesa, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of deception that stretched back months. What they discovered would reveal that this wasn't the first time mother and son had conspired to hide Robert's crimes against Princesa. In May 2025, 2 months before Princesa's murder, Robert Strother called 911 with a shocking claim. His girlfriend had been gang abused by multiple men on the roof of their building. It seemed like the report of a concerned boyfriend trying to get justice for his traumatized partner. But when police investigated, they discovered the alleged perpetrator was in prison at the time of the supposed attack. The entire story was fabricated. The mom and son fabricated the abuse story because our victim here was injured to the point she needed medical attention, Chief Kenny revealed. The fake abuse report wasn't random. It was a calculated move to explain away injuries that Princesa was already suffering from ongoing torture. Even more chilling, investigators believe Naida Jorge was complicit in creating this false narrative from the beginning. This revelation painted a disturbing picture. How long had this mother been helping her son cover up his abuse of Princesa? As Princesa lay dying in that stairwell, Naida Jorge made a choice that would define her as either a grieving witness or an active participant in murder. The evidence suggests she chose the latter. When police arrived, Jorge initially presented herself as just another witness to tragedy. But investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies. The apartment reeked of fresh bleach. Bloody clothes had been stuffed into garbage bags. Most telling of all, Princesa's body showed signs of being cleaned and dressed in fresh clothing before being dumped in the stairwell. She did attempt to clean up the crime scene, Chief Kenny confirmed. Jorge had allegedly washed blood from her son's victim, changed her clothes, and helped stage the scene to make it appear as though the murder had happened elsewhere. But what drives a mother to such extremes for her adult son? Princesa Encarnacion-Soto wasn't supposed to be in that Bronx apartment at all. Just weeks earlier, she had escaped. Living in Rhode Island with her mother, Josabel Soto, Princesa had left Robert Strother and seemed to be building a new life. "My daughter left him and came back home," her devastated mother told reporters. They had been together for nearly 3 years after meeting on Instagram, but Princesa had finally found the strength to walk away. Then, on July 11th, 2025, just 11 days before her murder, Princesa returned to the Bronx. She moved back into the apartment with Robert and his mother, Naida Jorge. What brought her back remains a mystery, but those 11 days would be the last of her life. The torture began almost immediately. Some of her wounds were healing when she died, suggesting the abuse started as soon as she returned. Why did Princesa go back? And did Naida Jorge know what her son planned to do? On Thursday, July 24th, 2 days after Princesa's death, Naida Jorge was arrested and charged with murder, manslaughter, hindering prosecution, concealment of a human corpse, and tampering with physical evidence. The 54-year-old woman who had worked for the Parks Department and MTA was remanded without bail. Her defense attorney argued that Jorge has been a law-abiding citizen for the entirety of her life, and suggested her actions were merely activities post to whatever happened to this person. But prosecutors painted a different picture, of a mother so devoted to protecting her violent son that she became an accomplice to murder. Meanwhile, Robert Strother remains a fugitive, somewhere out there, potentially planning his next move. The question that haunts investigators: was this Jorge's first time helping her son, or had she been enabling his violence for years? The apartment building at 2295 Grand Concourse held its own dark secrets. Police records showed 22 domestic violence calls to the address, 2 of them filed by Naida Jorge against her own son. Other women had also called for help, creating a pattern of violence that everyone seemed to know about but no one could stop. The mother is trouble. "I know she's crazy, but her son is the violent one," neighbor Maria F. told reporters. "Since he was a little kid, he was always a troublemaker." The building's residents described constant fighting, different banging going on, and an atmosphere of fear surrounding the Jorge apartment. Yet somehow, Robert Strother continued to find victims, and his mother continued to provide him sanctuary. How many other women might have suffered in that apartment? And how many times had Naida Jorge looked the other way? The case of Princesa Encarnacion-Soto forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about family loyalty, maternal instinct, and the lengths some people will go to protect those they love, even when those people are monsters. Naida Jorge now faces life in prison for allegedly helping her son torture and murder a young woman who was just trying to escape an abusive relationship. Robert Strother remains at large, a dangerous man with a history of violence and a mother who has proven she'll do anything to help him evade justice. As investigators continue searching for Strother, Princesa's family in Rhode Island mourns a daughter who showed incredible courage in leaving her abuser, only to tragically return to the very place that would become her tomb. The most haunting question remains: in choosing to protect her son, how many future victims could Naida Jorge have helped create? This case reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous people aren't just the perpetrators of violence. They're the ones who enable it, clean it up, and help it continue. In the end, a mother's love became a murder weapon, and a young woman's second chance became her final tragedy. Robert Strother remains wanted by the NYPD. Anyone with information about his whereabouts is urged to contact authorities immediately.
If this case gripped you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime.